Hey everybody. I've had a few requests to do just kind of a basic fundamentals of knife sharpening tutorial, so we're going to do that tonight. Some of you may have recall a recent post of mine. This is an old 10-inch Chicago cutlery chef knife, which I polished up and restored. And I chose this one first off because I thought that a large shiny knife might be captured well by the camera and kind of show you what's going on, but also because it's one I really wasn't very happy with the edge I got on it when I sharpened it initially. And so I'm going to try to see if I can get a little better edge on this thing. So we're going to do that tonight in real time. And the first thing I'm going to do is just dull this, because there's really no point in making a knife sharpening video when you start with a sharp knife. So what I just did was ground the point of the edge down on my 140 grit diamond plate. I'm going to do a couple more just for good measure. So, okay, so this is like a butter knife right now. This diamond plate is very aggressive. Takes metal out very quickly. And so at this point, the edge of it, you can even see the shiny glint right at the edge. It's flat. It's gone. So we're starting completely fresh. Get rid of that. And when starting with a very dull edge, you typically start with a coarse whetstone. This is a 200 grit Suihiro Debato splash and go stone. And a splash and go stone is one that you simply spritz some water, spray some water on it, or dunk it in water like I just did in the sink here. And then you can also use a Nagura or dressing stone to prep the surface a little bit before you start sharpening. Raises a little bit of a slurry, which is just particles of the stone floating in liquid on the surface here, and gets it all nice and ready to go. So the first thing to be concerned about is how do you hold a knife when you sharpen it? And the answer is you don't just grip it like this. You want your right hand or your left hand, if you're lefty, if you're doing everything the opposite, to be able to hold the angle of the blade very stable. So this angle, this would be like a 0-degree angle. This would be a 90-degree angle, 45-degree angle, 22-degree angle, and then we go down from there. Typically, kitchen knives are sharpened somewhere between 12 and 20 degrees-ish, depending upon the knife, its intended purpose and function, and other considerations. But we're going to do this one tonight at what I would consider just kind of a very standard Western chef knife angle of, let's say, 17, 18 degrees. Not going to go too crazy with it. So to find that, if we start at 90 degrees, the blade being straight up, we go to a 45, something like that. Half of that is 22. And we just drop it just a little bit more. The consistency of the angle is far more important than getting an exact, it must be a 17.5 degree angle or whatever. No, that's not really that important. So, hold this with the blade facing away from me, with the edge facing away from me. I get my middle finger around the choil here, my index finger down here stabilizing the edge, and my thumb up on the spine. That gives me a nice 3-point way to control the knife. And then when I flip the knife over, I kind of reverse that, and I have my index finger up on the spine and my thumb stabilizing the edge. So whichever side of the knife I'm working, the basic pattern stays the same. It just simply flips like that. So this knife has a fairly long straightish section and then a little curve up toward the tip, and wow, I don't even have to be careful of the edge. It's not sharp at all now. And so for the straight parts of the knife, I will be sharpening at a very, very much kind of back and forth, just straight across the stone. And then as I get up closer to the tip, I'll be curving things a little. If this were a very curved blade, we'd be doing much more of this type of stroke, following the curvature of the blade. This one is mostly straight and has some curvature at the tip. So I'm going to try to keep this as simple as possible, but basically you find your angle, and there are like angle guides you can buy. They're like little wedges of rubber. You could set like a little wedge of rubber at the end of your whetstone, and you lay the knife against it, and it shows you your angle, and then you go and you sharpen and you just keep that angle. But it gives you a reference for starting out, and some people really like those angle guys to start out. So I like to start by sharpening the left side of the knife because this is the side that's more difficult for me. It requires a little more maneuvering and stuff. The right side of the knife, for a right-handed individual, sharpening the right side of the knife is very easy. And as far as my setup here, it's pretty basic. Basically, I have a chunk of wood with a moist towel wrapped around it so we don't get any slippage. And all the wood does is just raise the stone up off my work surface a little so I have good knuckle clearance. So over on this side where my hand is, I kind of have the stone over toward that edge, and so I will never hit anything while I'm sharpening. Now this, we'll be using this stone a little later. This is in a stone holder, and so this will sit up on top of the board, and I'll have even more angle. And I needed to put that in the water anyway. That is a soaking stone, and soaking stones need to be soaked in water prior to use. They need to get all the air out. But these splash and go stones are specifically made that they don't need that. You throw some water on it and you start sharpening. And they are just awesome for sharpening on the go, so to speak. So let's get started. So I'm going to start at the heel and work my way to the tip. And each time I do that, that's a pass. So we say, well, I make a pass. That means you worked the entire length of the blade from tip to heel. And the same on the other side. You worked the entire blade. So basically, all this boils down to is finding the angle you want to use, putting the blade down on the stone, and making strokes, back and forth. When you get to the tip, you have to raise this thing up a little bit because otherwise you get too low of an angle and you really gouge your tip out. So when we get up to the tip, you'll see here my hand is low. When we get up to the tip, I have to raise my hand a little to get in there. So let's do that again. I'll show you the complete motion uninterrupted. So we're starting at the heel, making our first pass. Like that. So that's a pass. My left hand sits safely up above the cutting edge, about a ½ inch or so. In the case of a very narrow blade, it may need to be a little closer, and then you have to be a little more careful. But for a nice wide chef knife like this, it's riding my index finger of my right hand and 2 or 3 fingers of my left hand are riding comfortably above the edge. You don't want to be sharpening your finger on the stone, and you don't want to be sharpening with your fingers down against the edge here, because I promise you that's a recipe for serious injury, and we don't want that. So let's do another pass. Establish our angle. Fingers of the left hand applying just a little bit of pressure. And the left hand fingers walk down the blade. As I move the blade across the stone, the left hand fingers walk their way down so that they are always over the area that's getting sharpened. So the goal here, and this is my coarsest stone, by the way. This is a 200 grit stone, and I'm using it specifically because I just destroyed the edge. For a routine maintenance sharpening of a knife that's already in pretty good shape, you can start at a higher grit than this. We're going to be going through 4 grits tonight. So the goal when sharpening each side of the knife is to get what we call a burr on the side of the knife opposite the one you're sharpening. So we're sharpening the left side of the knife. It's going to raise a thin wire of metal, which we call a burr, over on the right. And when you feel that burr all the way down your edge, you'll know that you have reached the center of the edge, and then it's time to flip it over. In this case, because this stone is so aggressive, I already have a burr, and that's kind of amazing. But I'm going to do one more pass because I destroyed that apex of the edge so much that I want to make sure we have a very crisp bevel. You see, as I get down toward the tip, the strokes get more curved. I raise up to do the little tippy tip like that. And I have kind of an annoying habit of getting to the tip and then starting to back up. So my pass oftentimes ends up being about a pass and a half because I think, hey, I'm not sure I got that curved part quite good enough, so I better back up and hit that again. And it's a habit I'm trying to cure myself of, but with limited success. Okay, so I now have a burr all the way down. You never want to never test a burr for a burr this way. Burr is very sharp. You want to go across it. You can feel it easily with the palm of your thumb. Now, as we get into the finer and finer stones, the burr gets finer and finer. It can get harder to feel. Okay, so the left side of the knife is done now on the coarse stone, so we're going to go to the right side of the knife. The right side of the knife is much easier for a right-handed sharpener. Establish our angle. We got our thumb here, our index finger stabilizing. I do wrap mine under a little bit, but you can have it up along the spine also. I get a little better control with it wrapped underneath, but that's a very individual thing. For this side of the knife, I usually lay the knife at about a 45-degree angle across the stone, and then I start my pass again. And the left hand performs the same function. When I get up to the tip, the right hand gets raised up. I am so good at sharpening the right side of the knife. Wow, I already have a burr. We're going to do another pass again just because I just so thoroughly destroyed that edge earlier. So we're going to do one more pass. If you're starting with a finer stone than this, let's say your coarsest grit stone is, say, a 500 grit instead of a 200 grit. You know, it might take good 3 or 4 passes across here to get a burr, especially if it's a very dull edge. So let's do one more, just to be safe. All right. You hear that sound? That's my thumb scraping the burr. If we do that same motion over here now, it's a much softer sound. There is a little scraping because of the toothiness of that new grind on the bevel, but it's nothing like. You hear the difference? Yeah, of course you do. All right. So I typically do one more thing. It's time to move on to the 1000 grit stone, which is what we would consider a medium stone, and is where really the brunt of the sharpening gets done. And I have this massive burr all down the left side of the knife now from sharpening the right side. So last thing I do, maintaining the same angle I did before, I lay the knife on the stone and I just do a gentle pulling motion with no pressure. And the only purpose of that is just to knock some of that burr off so that when I go on to the next stone, I'm not tearing and gouging the surface of my finer stones. And I repeat that process with each consecutive stone. Now typically, at this point in the sharpening, you're done with a stone. This is a really great time to pull out your Nagura or dressing stone and just clean. Just give the surface a quick refresher. Get the metal shavings, which is what we call swarf. Get that off the stone. Give your stone a nice rinse. get all that crud off there, and set it aside, and it's ready to go for next time. The rest of the stones, I'm not going to do that tonight just to save time, but that's the procedure. So this is the 1000 grit stone, and this is where we will really sharpen and refine this edge, and everything above the 1000 grit is going to be polishing and refining. So again, we're going to sharpen the left side of the blade. Exact same procedure as before. We've got our nice grip here, controlling the angle of the knife. Set the blade on the stone. Now just a quick word about the pressure of the left hand. We're never using a lot of pressure, but when you're pushing the edge away from you, when the edge is cutting into the stone, you do not want to push down hard on it. We want more pressure coming back, which we call an edge trailing stroke. So this is an edge leading stroke. Less pressure, edge trailing stroke, more pressure. Like that. And on the opposite side of the knife, we'll be pushing more going this way with the edge moving away, with the edge trailing, and then lightening up the pressure as we come back. But let's go ahead and stop talking for a second now. We'll do wow, look at that. I didn't back up my pass. Maybe I'm learning something finally. Alright. The beginnings of a burr. As we get to finer stones, I like to do a few more passes just because these stones are much less aggressive and they take longer to remove the metal. Alright, we're almost there. I think probably one more pass on this side and we'll have it. Oh yeah, that feels nice. Now, by the time you get up to a 1000 grit range stone, that burr is a lot smaller and finer, and sometimes you actually have to rinse the gunk from the whetstone off the blade to make sure that you have it. There's a little spot there I'm not feeling as much. So let's do another couple passes. We want to this is the stone where we want to make sure that edge is extremely crisp and well defined, because everything we do beyond the 1000 grit stone is just refining and polishing. The 4000 plus stones take metal off very, very slowly and are not. I mean, yeah, can you sit on a 4,000 or 5,000 grit stone and saw and saw and saw and saw and saw away and eventually remove some metal? Yeah, you can. But why wear your stones out like that? It's better to spend more time on your coarse and medium stones and make sure it's really, really right before you move on to your polishing stones. Alright, that's feeling pretty good. Let's switch to the other side. Flip my grip. If I could just get a job sharpening the right sides of knives all day, I figure I'd be in hog heaven. Because it's just so pleasurable. You can hear my thumb scraping the burr. Got a burr. I always got a burr a lot faster working the right side of the knife. It just lays, for a right-handed sharpener, the right side of the knife, doing it this way, it just lays so well. The handle's never in the way. You don't have to keep changing your direction and all of that. Let's do one more over here just to be sure, because we did several passes on the left side. course, all this goes a lot faster when you're not stopping to talk about it. Alright, so a much finer burr than before, but you can hear it. 1000 grit. It still leaves a burr that you can feel. So now we're going to repeat. Now on this stone, we're going to do more of that stropping kind of motion. We're going to do it back and forth on both sides, and we're going to really, really refine this edge before we move on to the polishing stones. So I like to do at least like 10 on each side. This side, and flip the knife over, start at the tip, like that. And these are much more linear strokes instead of being back and forth. And the goal of this is just to stand those micro teeth that are right at the edge. We want to stand them straight up on the edge of the knife. Alright, let's have a feel of that. Still got a little, let's see, let's do a little. That's better. Now, if I start dragging my thumb sideways across the edge, it starts to sound sharp and toothy. Never go this way, okay? Sideways across the edge, you're fine. That is the sound of a crisp and toothy edge. If you don't get that sound, your edge is over polished, or it's been rolled over, or something's happened. Alright, that's looking, that bevel's looking pretty nice. Maybe kind of see here. Yeah, it's not catching. Let's see. Catch. Yeah, maybe if I dry it off, you can see it better. Oh, yeah. So, oh, there we go. So at the 1000 grit level, we're starting to get a little nice polish in the bevel. And honestly, we could stop here. We could put this knife on a strap right now, and it would be very toothy. It would be very good for doing things like slicing tomatoes and other soft skin fruits and vegetables, which a little bit toothier edge works wonders on. But we're going to just continue just for more practice. So this is my 4000 grit stone, and like the preceding two stones, this is the Suehiro de Bado. It's a Japanese stone, and it is splash and go, which means I get to just quickly dunk it in the water and it's ready to go. So once more, we're going to repeat the same procedure. We're going to have one more stone after this, but on that stone, all we're going to do is strop. It's just going to be refinement. And then we're going to actually strop on a leather strop. So this will be the last stone that we actually do the full sharpening motions. And this stone will raise a burr like the others, but it will be that much smaller and finer than the previous ones. If you do a really, really good job on your coarse and medium stone, by the time you start getting into your polishing stones, you'll have very minimal amount of work to do. And honestly, a good polishing stone should last basically a lifetime of sharpening, because you're doing your heavy work on coarser stones. By the time you get to this stone, a very few passes with light pressure should suffice, and you're not digging into the stone. Alright, I've got a burr all the way down, but I'm going to rinse the slurry off. You can hear it. But it's a much fainter sound now, isn't it? We're starting to get, well, I'll show up. Let's do this side. Once we get done on this stone, I'll show you the edge again, and you'll see it starting to really take on a beautiful polish. All right, that is done. So now we're going to repeat the stropping procedure that we did at the end of the last stone, except now we're getting serious about the stropping. Now it's not just about cleaning up to go to the next stone. Now, really, so very little pressure. I start for this side of the knife. I start with the heel on the stone. Almost no pressure. And you just want to drag the knife very gently. And then on this side, I like to start at the tip and go this way. All right. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There's no one magic number. There are people who take the stropping on the stone that, they'll do like 10 per side, and then 8 per side, and then 6 per side. I mean, there's people who do a lot of this stone stropping. I'm still feeling a little bit of a burr over here, so. Let's see if we can't just. Now that edge is sounding really toothy. That rasping sound when you go sideways, that's the little microscopic teeth on the edge of the blade rasping against your skin. But if you go this way, it feels just smooth as can be, and that's what you want. You want the side of the bevel to be just absolutely smooth, but the very apex of the edge to be toothy and raspy like that. All right, that actually feels pretty good. So we're going to put this aside and go to, and honestly, we could finish there. I could put the knife on a leather strap right there, and we'd be done. But let's just practice this stropping stroke just a little bit more. So this is an 8,000 grit stone, and this is the cheapest, most generic stone that I still use in my arsenal. So I'm going to be looking to upgrade to a higher quality 8,000 grit stone in the not too distant future. I have a very high quality 12,000 grit stone, but a 12,000 grit stone is pretty much wasted on a Western knife like this, a soft stainless steel knife. 12,000 grit, that's a little more of a specialty. But I find that lightly stropping the edge on the 8,000 before going to the leather strop does tend to improve the cutting performance of my knives. Some people stop at 2,000, 3,000. It really all boils down to individual preference and how people like their edges. And some people like their edges rougher and toothier, and some people like their edges more polished and refined. And I find that for my uses in general, a more polished edge is more durable and works better for me for my kitchen needs. Let's just do a couple more just to be. Just no pressure here. Basically the weight of the knife plus maybe an ounce at the most. All right, let's see how that feels. All right, I like that. So we're going to the leather strap now, and then we'll cut test. So put this aside. Always dry your knife off before stropping. This feels pretty darn sharp now, so hopefully it performs as well as it feels to my finger. So this is a basic double-sided paddle strap. There's a smooth leather side, and there's a suede leather side, which is a little softer. And I've loaded the suede side with some polishing compound. Leather will strap metal without compound. The protein matrix of the leather will actually abrade steel. Basically what the compound does is just speeds up the process. So normally I lay this down to do this, but just in the interest of camera angle, stropping is done with very light pressure. All we're doing here is just cleaning that edge, getting any tiny little remnants of the burr that we missed, and just polishing. You're basically, right now we're just polishing and refining the micro teeth at the edge of the bevel. So there's almost no pressure here, just barely touching it. And stropping, we're just doing a basic quickie stropping tonight, but stropping is in and of itself an art form and could be the subject of a much longer video all on its own. But we're not going to do that. This is just the basics. So nice. Okay. Well, let's see how we did. My video is about to cut me off. So here we have some paper. Yeah. Not bad. It's not. I can already tell it's not the sharpest knife I own still, but we went from butter knife dull to that in just a few minutes. So there we have it. Before I get cut off, the basics of how to sharpen your average kitchen knife, and hope you all enjoyed it, and have a great Thanksgiving, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.